Hello class, welcome back to our note-taking on Edmodo. Before we start, make sure that you have all of the things that you need in order to be successful with your vocabulary today. So you need a couple of things. You need your vocabulary chart and a blue or black pen. Don't worry about a dictionary or thesaurus for right now, just make sure that you have those two things. Go ahead and pause until you have those things, and then you can restart when you're ready. Great, now that you have all of your materials, go ahead and flip to the back of your chart where you can make your best predictions or educated guesses about the words. Pause the presentation until you have predicted the meanings of all of the words. Make sure that you use your context clues like we've been talking about in class. Go ahead and pause and then press play when you're ready to go on to the first word. All right, thank you for taking the time to practice with your context clues. Go ahead and flip over to the front of your chart so we can take notes on our first word. Our first word is mendacious. You can see a picture of Pinocchio there with Jiminy Cricket. Hopefully this helps confirm what you'd guessed for the meaning for mendacious. Let's go ahead and take notes on this word. As you can see here, mendacious is an adjective, so it's a word that describes a person, place, or thing. The meaning is not telling the truth or lying. So you could see in the previous slide that Pinocchio is a mendacious puppet because he is always lying or not telling the truth. Synonyms, or words that mean the same thing as mendacious, are dishonest, deceitful, duplicitous, erroneous, or fraudulent. This is just a friendly reminder to make sure you write down every single synonym because you don't want to set yourself up for failure when one of the synonyms is listed on the quiz and it's not the one you wrote down. Antonyms, or words that mean the opposite of mendacious, are frank, honest, sincere, or truthful. So for example, just as Pinocchio is a mendacious puppet, Jiminy Cricket is a sincere cricket. You also have some other forms of the word mendacious. If you want to turn it into a noun, you would talk about mendaciousness. For example, the mendaciousness of Pinocchio led him to get into all kinds of trouble. You can also change it into an adverb, and you can say mendaciously. The student mendaciously lied about the reasoning that he wasn't in tutorials on Saturday. I'm going to move on now, so if you're not done copying down the important information, go ahead and pause the presentation until you're ready to go on to the next word. Now that you have all of the important information that'll help you utilize the word mendacious, let's do a check for understanding. Go ahead and read through these 4 scenarios. Think, which one of these 4 scenarios would most tempt me to be mendacious? Remember, mendacious, let's go back, means not telling the truth or lying. So if you're thinking about these 4 scenarios, which would most tempt you to be mendacious? Take a minute, pause this presentation, and formulate your answer. Be ready to share when we get back to class. Okay, now we've thought through mendacious, and I know I would be tempted to mendaciousness if my teacher left a cupcake on the desk because I love them, and I might not be able to hold back and tell the truth about stealing their cupcake. All right, let's move on to our next word. Our next word is obfuscate. Obfuscate. Let's go and make sure that we were correct in our predictions. Here's all the information you need for obfuscate. It is a verb, so it's an action. It is to make something confusing, unclear, or unintelligible. Or it's to bewilder someone. So if I were going to use this word in context, I might say, the teacher obfuscated the meaning of the word when she gave me an example that didn't make sense. Therefore, I was more confused than when we began. If we want to think about words that mean the same thing or synonyms as obfuscate, we could use the words confuse, baffle, bewilder, complicate, obscure, or puzzle. Words that mean the opposite or antonyms are to make clear, to explain, or clarify. Thinking about both the definition and the synonyms and antonyms to this word, it's clear to me that this word has a negative connotation because we are making something confusing. We always want to learn more, so making something confusing is definitely a negative connotation. If you have not yet written down all of the information for the word obfuscate, pause the presentation and then press play when you are ready to do a CFU. Okay, y'all, welcome back. Time to check if we understand the meaning of the word obfuscate. So I want you to think through this question. What is something in your life that people unnecessarily obfuscate? You can see the example there. I think people obfuscate baking directions for cakes. You just open the box, mix in the wet ingredients, and bake. Nowadays, the box has 20 different directions that cause the baker to confuse the correct process. This results in mistakes. As you can see, I think that the directions make it more confusing than it should be when I am baking a cake. Take a minute and think through something in your life that people unnecessarily obfuscate or make more confusing. Make sure you're ready to share your answer when we get back to class. Pause the presentation until you have an answer and are ready to go on. Okay, let's go on to our third word. Our word is opaque. You can see there an example of a window that is opaque. Let's go ahead and check our definition. This is an adjective, meaning it describes something. So in the previous slide, you could see the thing we were describing, the window, was opaque, meaning that it was not transparent or translucent. Those two words mean being able to see through. Another example of a definition is not allowing light to pass through, as you could see in the previous picture. Synonyms or words that mean the same thing as opaque are muddy, blurred, cloudy, dull, hazy, impenetrable, murky, shady, or smoky. Antonyms, or things that mean the opposite of opaque, are clear, lucid, translucent, transparent, or unclouded. Thinking about that definition and these synonyms and antonyms, opaque has a neutral connotation. It's neither bad nor good all of the time to be able to see through a window. There are two other forms here. The noun form is opaqueness. We can describe the opaqueness of the window in the previous slide. The opaqueness of the window did not allow the kids to see outside. There's also an adverb, opaquely. You can opaquely describe something. The professor opaquely described the ins and outs of the economic structure. This means that it was not very clear, and we could not see through the definition. Take a minute, pause the presentation if you don't have all this information down, and we're going to move on to the check for understanding. Think about this. What is one good reason for having opaque windows on your home? Isn't the point of windows to see through them? So what we want you to do is think through a scenario in which it would be good for your windows to be opaque or not able to be seen through. Take a minute, think through this, and we'll move on to our fourth word. All right, here we go. Our fourth word is putative. As you can see, it is an adjective, which means it describes a person, place, or a thing. The definitions for putative are commonly believed to be the case, but not necessarily true, or unproven, unsubstantiated. Make sure you write down both of those definitions. Synonyms, or words that mean the same thing as putative, are accepted, alleged, assumed, hypothetical, imputed, supposed, or presumptive. Words that mean the opposite of putative are proven, real, or true. So remember, things that are putative are commonly believed to be true, but we don't know if they're true. You can change it to the adverb form, which is putatively, putatively. Make sure that you have all of the information for this word before moving on to the check for understanding. Pause the presentation until you're ready to move on. So now let's think about how we can utilize this word. Which of these theories is the most putative or commonly believed but not true? You can see you have 4 options here. First, that there are 9 planets and that they circle the sun. Second, down here, you can see global warming. This is an example of global warming. The third thing you could think about is, does money equal happiness? Second, does democracy lead to all of these things? Is democracy the best thing? Think through each of these and decide which is the most putative. Pause until you're ready to go on to our 5th word. Okay, let's go on to our 5th word. Our 5th word is unctuous, and you can see an example of an unctuous person here. Let's see what it means. It is an adjective, so as we talked about, it can describe a person, place, or a thing. The first definition is about a person. This is an excessively or ingratiatingly flattering person. They are oily. This means not actually how they physically appear oily, but they are someone who trips all over themselves in order to flatter someone else, even if we think that it's not necessarily genuine or true. So you could see that Jim Carrey, his character from Liar Liar, is an example of this. Also, this can talk about minerals or rocks. These unctuous minerals or rocks are ones that really have a greasy or soapy feel. So this means both literally greasy, as in on a rock, or figuratively greasy. A car salesman is often described as unctuous. They will tell you that you are the best person for this car or the most beautiful person that they've ever seen in order to get you to buy the car. Synonyms, or words that mean the same thing as unctuous, are insincere, smooth, smug, suave, or greasy. Antonyms, or words that mean the opposite, are genuine or sincere. So a person who is not unctuous always tells you the truth, even if it's not the most flattering thing to you. Someone who is unctuous tells you lies just to make you feel better about yourself. There are two other forms of this word. You can change it to a noun and change it to unctuousness. The unctuousness of the car salesman completely turned me off because I knew that he was just flattering me so that I would buy the car he wanted me to. You can also act in an unctuous manner, which means you can act unctuously. He unctuously bowed to me as I walked into the car dealership because he wanted me to buy his car. Pause the presentation until you have all this important information down, and then we'll check for understanding. So I'd love you all to think about, in which of the following situations would you be the most unctuous and why? You have your 4 options here. Think about what would make you flatter people even if you didn't believe what you were saying about them. Pause the presentation until you have your idea, and we'll go on to our 6th word. Okay, we're ready to move on. Our next word is acquiesce. You can see the German Shepherd acquiescing to his master's desires here. The word is acquiesce. As you could tell from my description, this is a verb. The German Shepherd was acquiescing. He acquiesced. That means that was the action he was taking. This word means to submit or comply silently or without protest, to agree or to consent. For example, every single one of our students always acquiesces to Miss Parrish and my requests. Hopefully you saw the verbal irony in that statement. We also have synonyms, which mean the same thing as acquiesce. You can accept, agree, allow, comply, conform, concur, submit, or yield. Those are all things that mean the same as acquiesce. You can also think about your antonyms, words that mean the opposite of acquiesce. You can disagree, dissent, object, or protest. Generally, acquiesce has a positive connotation, but at times can be negative. Sometimes you should protest. However, this still has a positive connotation. There are 3 ways that you can use acquiesce as other parts of speech. When you acquiesce, you are demonstrating acquiescence. The class's acquiescence to their teacher's requests meant that they learned a lot more that day. People who often comply and do exactly as they're asked are described as acquiescent. The acquiescent students walked silently into class and began their due first without the teacher reminding them. The adverb acquiescently describes how you do things. The students acquiescently walked into class and began their work immediately. Make sure that you have all of the information for this word down, and then we'll check our understanding. So now let's think about where we might not acquiesce, where we might not comply without protest. Read through these 4 examples and then decide, when would you not agree silently? When would you not acquiesce? Pause the presentation until you have your idea. Okay, we are almost at the end of our time for this recording, but we still have a couple more words to go. So go ahead, finish up your notes for all of the words we've done so far, and then click on the second presentation so that you can get the definitions to the rest of the words.